Everyone. This is Erica Oriens with the Michigan Community College Association. Thank you for joining our recap webinar for our MiTransfer Pathways Phase 2 Meeting 2 that we hosted on May 14th, 2019 at Lansing Community College. Before I continue, I will just ask if you can hear me, if anybody can unmute and let me know that you can hear me.
I can hear you. This is Sharon.
Oh, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Thank you. And so you should all be able to see in your options for the meeting that you can mute yourself, which will probably be helpful today because we are recording, and we will put this recording up on our website as well for folks that were not able to join us today. You'll also notice on your screen, you should be able to see an area where you can chat, and then you can select where you chat to anyone, or you can chat to, or everyone, I should say, or you can chat with specific people as well. So please go ahead and use that chat as you see fit. So we'll go ahead and get started. Next slide. So what we're going to do today is really just go over the whole day. So in about 50 minutes, you'll be able to hear everything that went on in a full day meeting that we had with about 200 people, as I said, at LCC West. We opened the day with Pete Carson, who's the campus president at Baker College of Auburn Hills, was representing the Michigan Independent Colleges and Universities today and welcomed our group of faculty that we came today. And then I provided an overview of the day. And so just as a reminder, we reminded folks what our project objectives are. We received funding from the state of Michigan to support this work, and our transfer steering committee, which is representatives from over 30 colleges and universities across Michigan, established an objective to make the overall transfer experience more efficient, easy to understand, and simple to navigate while optimizing credit transfer. As we continued, the Transfer Steering Committee, in their work over the last several years, identified several strategies to replace the Michigan Transfer Network, which I'm pleased to say will go live on this Friday, May 31st, to develop multi-institutional associate to bachelor's degree transfer pathways, and to align mathematics requirements within programs of study, which was the focus of the meeting that we had on May 14th. Also to award academic credit for military experience, spotlight best practices, and produce and utilize data on transfer student outcomes. As I mentioned, just going through those priorities, we will be going live with the new Michigan Transfer Network this Friday morning. If you go to the old MTN, you'll get a redirect message to go to this site. We have been working on the development of this site for over a year. We have had significant engagement from colleges and universities and several people representing macro in the development of this site. As you know, on the old MTN, students could primarily just transfer their courses. It focused on individual course-to-course equivalencies, and students will still be able to do that in the new MTN, but they'll also be able to find information about the Michigan Transfer Agreement and find information about transferring their associate degree, as well as a lot of other information about each individual college and university. Each college and university has their own customized page that students can go to find information about how they can request a transcript, or what are the MTA courses at their specific institution. So there's a lot more functionality available to students on this website. There is also a significant amount of functionality behind the scenes. We have built a fairly robust reporting tool that colleges and universities can use, really focused on improving the equivalencies that are in the MTN. So we're excited for that site to go live this Friday, so expect to hear more information about that in the coming weeks. We also reminded our Phase 2 participants that with the funding that we received from the state of Michigan, we committed to building agreements multi-institutional agreements in 12 different pathways, and we've done this in 3 phases. And the programs are listed in these 3 phases here. And phase 2, faculty focused on communication, computer science, mechanical engineering, and social work. And then for those of you who just can't get enough of these transfer pathways, we also convened the phase 3 faculty the next day on May 15th. And our recap webinar for that is scheduled for tomorrow, and we'll also have that recording online. So the first meeting that we had with the phase 2 faculty very much focused on identifying the courses that students need to take in the first and second year that meet associate and bachelor's degree program requirements. So our goal really focused on what should students take. If a student directly enrolled in a program like computer science at a university, what courses are they taking in the first and second year? And that was our goal in the first meeting. We had a kind of a fun way of getting to that information relatively quickly. The faculty groups identified courses that students took in the first and second year, and then we put those courses on a big sticky note up on the wall. And the top half of the sticky note, we asked the universities to indicate if that course was required, recommended, optional, or appropriate in the first and second year, and they said yes or no. And the community colleges indicated if they offered that course at the institution. So we're showing you 3 examples here from molecular biology, physics, and then if the students needed an additional math course, for example, here. And this was how we arrived at courses that were common across the state that were required in the first and second year. And then faculty also identified several parking lot issues, or in that first meeting, although a day seems like a long time, it actually isn't a lot of time to address all of the issues that faculty face. So we asked them to document those in the parking lot, and that's important because they addressed some of those parking lot issues in the second meeting, which they were at. And then we asked them to complete these worksheets. And these program worksheets are really designed to help colleges and universities think through the courses that students are taking in the Michigan Transfer Agreement, the common courses, which we referred to as the MiTransfer pathways courses. So these are the courses that every university required and most community colleges offered in the first and second year. Most community colleges offered, and the universities required those courses in the first and second year. And so for those of you who are involved with transfer, you know that, and those of you who are from community colleges, you know how important it is to get students enrolled in those major specific courses in the first and second year. And you also know how helpful it is when you know, as a community college advisor, for example, that those courses will transfer to a wide variety of institutions across the state. So this idea that we would have these common courses is intended to provide students with some flexibility around what they would take in the first and second year, and then we'll work toward making sure those courses will transfer. And then institutions in the bottom section of the worksheet also identified courses that students, so they may not be common across the state, but they certainly would want students to take those courses in the first and second year. So a great example of this from our first phase of pathways was that many of the universities recommended that students take a year of physics in the first and second year, but not all of them recommended that or even required it for their program. So individual universities were able to include that in the remaining degree requirements. And then we also know that there are community colleges who have specific community college requirements or associate degree requirements that may not necessarily be requirements for the bachelor's degrees. And so the community colleges were able to include those courses down here to arrive at the total number of credits that students would need to take for the associate degree. And so the agenda for the rest of the day was to break the faculty into their smaller faculty groups again. where they looked at the parking lot issues. Then we broke and had a delicious lunch, reported out those breakouts, and then had a working session in the afternoon. I want to go over some of the parking lot assumptions that we covered with the faculty before we start talking specifically about the specific program parking lot issues, just to make sure that people had a good understanding of where we're trying to go with this work. So first is that these pathways and the work that we're doing collectively as many institutions of higher education will not guarantee that students are admitted to any institution. So we recognize that students would still need to get admitted to the institution to be able to transfer to that institution. We also recognize that these pathways would not guarantee secondary or program admission. So if, for example, a program had a specific competitive or selective admission requirement, just because they took the courses doesn't necessarily mean that they would be guaranteed admission. We also wanted to recognize that the information that we are providing to students is general guidance about what they should take. And we want to acknowledge that every student will have their own customized plan. So this is just general guidance about what students would take in the first and second year. Each student will continue to work with faculty and with their advisors to make sure that they're following their own customized plan. Advisors, of course, will still continue to work with students to explore careers, select a program of study, and identify transfer institutions. So in no way is this intended to push students into these programs or limit students' ability to choose a program. It's simply if the student selected one of these programs, this is what they should take in the first and second year. We still recognize that students will come in undecided, but these program plans or these pathways will give students a better idea of what they should take to be prepared for that. Next. So then we went into our parking lot discussions that we identified from when we did this work back in November. Next. And then faculty went to lunch once they had those parking lot discussions. And then when we came back together, they reported out what the results were from their parking lot discussions. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Katie, who will talk about the report outs from the parking lot. Katie?
Thanks, Erica. So as you heard, when the faculty met last fall, they had each group identified their own issues in the parking lot that they were not able to address in that first meeting. And that made up the brunt of the discussions during this particular meeting that happened just a few weeks ago. So we asked them to actually go ahead and share out what the resolutions were to the issues that they had previously derived. And I will say, I think in all of the rooms, the first task of order was to identify issues that maybe were not essential to or maybe slightly outside of the scope of the project that we have today, which is building multi-institutional associate to bachelor's degree transfer pathway agreements. So folks had to really keep that in mind as they considered whether or not the parking lot issues needed to be attended to during the meeting, or that they were items that maybe were important to consider, but perhaps not as critical to the pathway development. So in communication, previously the Intro to Communication course had been a tentative course as a MiTransfer Pathways course, and the faculty were able to decide with consensus that it could be included in the pathway, and that folks can and should be able to make those equivalent or aligned. And I prefer to use the term aligned because often we know that courses do not become exactly equivalent, but most institutions, and certainly the American Association of Collegiate Admissions Counselors and Registrars, I'm not sure I got that right, but they are called ACRO for short, has recommended at least a 70% match of learning outcomes in order to align transfer curriculum. So in that case, the faculty again said that that course would be included. There was some discussion about the differences between communication programs in a BA or a BS environment, and the faculty consensus was that folks in either of the programs, the BA versus the BS, could choose between QR or statistics for the recommended mathematics pathway for the MTA for this particular program area. The faculty had consensus that they would not begin to address concentrations in the communication programs in the first and second year, and that transfer students should not begin to take classes in those focus areas in those first and second years. They also agreed that 200 to 300 level transferability should not be an issue, and as long as the learning outcomes align, the curriculum should go ahead and align as well, even if they are differently leveled. And then they confirmed all of these courses. So there were no changes in this pathway except to lift the tentative off of Introduction to Communication Studies. And then again, each pathway was requested to select or recommend one or several areas in mathematics, and QR or stats is acceptable in this program. In computer science, some of you may recall that in the first meeting, there was a more open invitation to see if computer science bachelor's programs and folks with computer type programs at the associate degree level could discuss any areas of convergence between and among their programs. Ultimately, that did not occur. There was not as much convergence between those differential programs, and so the decision for this second meeting was made to really focus on the computer science bachelor's degree transfer pathway, with a decision made to give further attention to the more technically and occupationally oriented computer type programs, which would be like cybersecurity, computer networking, things like that, to kind of table that as another option for creating new opportunities for students in those associate degrees, but perhaps in a different type of bachelor's degree, not in computer science, because the requirements were just too differential. And so that was one decision that was made. And you can see that in the bullet at the top as far as the report out went. There was some discussion about what those common courses were, and in a moment you'll see the slide where the courses are confirmed. Some institutions split their curriculum a little differently in the programming courses and the data structure course, and so there may be a need to do what we call a many-to-many or sequenced equivalency, where the institution might require 2 or 3 courses completed in total in order to get credit for those same 2 or 3 courses covering all of the material required in that program. Interestingly, discrete math is recommended by all universities, but not as many community colleges are offering that course. However, it was a really nice opportunity for community colleges to realize that that is an opportunity for them to begin developing discrete math, particularly utilizing their university partners' syllabi as a model to ensure that transfer alignment so that their students can take that course in the first 2 years and not be offset once they transfer. There was some discussion about additional mathematics courses, which, as Erica described the worksheets earlier, many of these courses that are not specifically listed in the pathway will be wonderful opportunities for those additional degree requirements that universities can denote at the bottom of their worksheets. And if a community college in the area offers those courses, that's a wonderful chance for students to see that there's a good match for that as kind of a strategic transfer elective as they move through their transfer pathway in this area. And then there was some discussion as well on whether or not the universities required specific science courses, or if there was a more limited selection of the science courses in the MTA. And it will be incumbent upon universities to denote that in their worksheets and then in the landing pages that they end up developing for these pathways. And here is the final list of computer science courses that were agreed upon, again, with consensus from the computer science faculty. In mechanical engineering, there was a similar conversation regarding mathematics, particularly centered around whether institutions needed differential equations and or linear algebra. As you can see, in most cases, both of these content areas are required. However, for this MiTransfer pathways, the decision was made that a 4-credit differential equations class would be included as one of the common courses, and it must cover linear algebra. A caveat to this is that some universities also require additional linear algebra classes. In those cases, the universities should be placing that in one of those remaining degree requirements lines, so that again, if the community colleges offer that course and that's required at that university, the student is aware and can make plans to take it, particularly because it will likely affect their future course sequencing. Another decision made by the group was that the course titled either Strengths of Materials or Mechanics of Materials would not require a lab in order to transfer into the pathway. while some of the institutions do have a lab component in that course, the faculty had consensus that it was not required at the community college level in order to be included in the pathway. As I understand it, there was extensive dialogue regarding Intro to Engineering as a conceptual course. Ultimately, there was no consensus that an Intro to Engineering course would work in this pathway. If it's something that is required at the university, it could and would be transferable from a community college. It could be included in that remaining degree requirement section, but the faculty actually made the choice to add Intro to Computing and Graphics/Computer-Aided Design as MiTransfer courses. So I will go ahead and click forward to the new version of courses in mechanical engineering. This pathway saw the most changes in the courses that were selected. So they previously had Intro to Engineering as a tentative course, and previously those two courses on the bottom were not included. In addition, I believe linear algebra was previously listed as a separate course, and I've already described how the differential equations course needs to be inclusive of linear algebra concepts and at least 4 credits as a minimum, but that linear algebra course as a different course would not be included in the actual pathway courses. In social work, there were no changes to the courses selected. The major issue in social work revolved around discussions on accreditation and state licensing. And the discussion was actually very nuanced. There was discussion about the national accreditation standards for a bachelor's in social work. There was much dialogue about whether or not human services bachelor's degrees could be included in this pathway. The faculty were resoundingly clear that this is a pathway to a bachelor's degree in social work, which in Michigan, the licensing requirements state that the student must have graduated from a CSWE accredited bachelor's program. That's the Council on Social Work Education. Because in order to sit for the state license to be a licensed social worker, that is the stipulation here. And so even though there are community college programs in health services or any other program areas or even just the liberal arts transfer at the community college that can articulate to this pathway, the faculty decided that it must be a CSW accredited bachelor's program in order to participate in this particular pathway. The faculty also talked at length about the remaining degree requirements being very important for social work to make sure that the students get enough credits to complete both the associate and the bachelor's degree requirements. And as you'll see here in the confirmed courses, there were not a lot of courses in common because just like communication offers areas of specialization, so does social work, and they happen pretty quickly in the students' course selections once they've declared their major. So again, it is incumbent upon the universities who want to participate to make sure that they are being clear about courses that could be taken in that remaining degree requirement section that would be good transfer courses in the first 2 years, so the community college student and advisor know what those options are. The transfer liaisons also had the opportunity to meet in separate groups both days, actually, for the Phase 2 and the Phase 3 meeting, and provide some peer leadership and peer support. There was some discussion of some just overall project updates and kind of what's happening with some of the technicalities of the work. And some of you may realize too, you know, we have 3 phases of this work, Phase 2 currently being at the midpoint. People say this low-hanging fruit term all the time. And essentially, we've sort of already picked the low-hanging fruit, and now we're moving into some more complicated issues because there's no more fruit that's hanging low. It's all up in the trees. And we really are moving into a phase of the work in all 3 of the phases where the project staff has done what we can to support the work, but the nitty-gritty happens now at your institutions. And it really is becoming clear that the transfer liaison is kind of the glue that holds all of this together and helps to make sure all the wheels are turning and people are moving forward with this. There seems to be a lot of collegiality amongst the transfer liaisons, and I would encourage, if you're looking for support or you're not quite clear on things, you can certainly reach out to the project staff, and our information will be included on the final slide in the presentation. But you can also reach out to your peers, and I encourage you to do that and also to review the Canvas board for the transfer liaisons, as several individuals have indicated a desire to have some digital communication through the Canvas discussion boards for the transfer liaison group. After we reported out, people they moved themselves and sat with their campus teams so that they could begin to work together on two major priorities, being that we revised the set of worksheets for final submission. So people needed to kind of convert their worksheets into this new revised version, which are now up on the project website, and you'll see the link to that in a little while. And then folks needed to begin attending to the course equivalency between and among all participating institutions. So we provided some tools and resources for people to be able to do that. This is a screenshot of the revised version of the worksheet, actually worksheets, because the two big changes are that we actually removed the discrete listing of MTA courses because it became confusing for people to have them in multiple places on the worksheet. And then we also, the remaining degree requirements section is treated differently for the community colleges versus the universities. So we had to split these back out into a community college version and a university version, or you could call it an associate degree versus a bachelor's degree version of this worksheet. And again, these are posted at MiTransfer.net under the Phase 2 Meeting 2 webpage, which we will link to in a little while. In that worksheet, folks are asked to go ahead and indicate which degree and program they are articulating into the pathway. If there are multiple programs at your institution that may fit a particular pathway, you are requested to submit multiple worksheets and not to list them all on one, because our assumption is that the course requirements will be differential, and so you would need to have a customized worksheet for each one. Credits required up here is the minimum credits required in meeting all of your graduation and degree requirements. I already explained that we removed the discrete listing of these MTA courses and replaced it with a statement that basically bases all of the agreements on the MTA and takes for granted that the student will complete the MTA and receive 30 credit hours for that. It also indicates the recommended mathematics pathway at the bottom of the blurb. This is where those courses go in that were commonly agreed upon, and these are already prepared, as I said, on the website, and they have the courses listed for each one of the pathways. So you don't have to worry about looking those up. You simply have to indicate what your subject and course number, as well as course title and credit hours are for your particular courses that fit that category. And then at the community college level, this remaining degree requirements really is anything left at the community college or specifically required in order to get the associate degree. Some of the common things that would go in here is if your community college requires American history, for example. Even though American history may fulfill an MTA category, because it is a specific degree requirement that is not part of the pathway courses, it should be listed here to be clear to the student that that must be completed to get the associate degree. Similarly, your program area or your campus-specific recommendation or requirements may also include something like wellness or PE, something like that would go here. And then if there are any additional specific program requirements to get that associate degree, it would go here. That blacked out line that says remaining hours is simply mathematically what is left in order to meet the minimum degree requirements. And in some cases that's pretty clear. In other cases it'll depend on prerequisites and electives and things like that. But it is intended that that number helps the student realize there are 14 hours that they should be looking in the bottom section at their intended four-year college or university to identify additional coursework that can fill out those 14 hours and would apply to both the associate and the bachelor's degree. And that's why it's incumbent upon our four-year college and university partners to list those courses out at the bottom. Those institutions should not be listing any and all remaining degree requirements to get the bachelor's degree. They should only be including courses in there that are required and can be completed for transfer in the first 2 years, or would be recommended for students at their own institutions, direct entry students, to take in the first 2 years to remain on track to have junior status after those first 60 credits are complete. In addition to completing the worksheet, the revised final version of the worksheet and uploading those to Canvas, institutions are also asked to attend to their course equivalency between and among all participating institutions. We have created an equivalency tracking tool, again listed on the project website, that lists out all of the different institutions and allows you to track where those equivalencies are already in place and where they might not yet be. However, we have also made this a lot easier for people using the new MTN, which, as Erica shared, goes live on Friday. It is linked on this slide, and it also includes a new feature for secure users. All of your campuses likely have at least one, if not more, secure users who will have access to what we are calling MiTransfer Pathway Course Equivalency Matrices. Some of you may recall from prior phases the grids with the green boxes that indicated whether a course was or was not yet aligned for equivalency. These new matrices replace those that had previously been created manually using the old MTN, and there were some data integrity issues. The new reports will be a click of a button, and they will pull directly from the data that your institution has uploaded to the MTN. So they'll be a nice way for you to manage or track your equivalencies for participating in the pathway. The third thing that will help with this equivalency process is for folks to go ahead and post and take a look at their peer institution syllabi in the Canvas forum that we are using for digital communication and document uploading. And I may have forgotten to put the Canvas link in here, but those of you who are participating in the project should already be connected with the Canvas forum, and if you're not, you can reach out to me after today's program and I can send you the materials to self-enroll. In the academic disciplines, there is a specific module for each one of the program areas, and there are discussion boards already built where you will upload your final version of the worksheet and can also upload your syllabi for each one of the MiTransfer Pathway courses. And then, of course, it should go without saying that in order to develop those equivalencies, you will need to do some communicating with your peer institutions to make sure that the equivalencies are active and loaded into the MTN. There are several of us consultants on the project team who are available to support the institutions in that process, and we can certainly discuss that with you offline or individually as needed. After we actually gave people time to work in their groups, we gave them almost 2 hours, and we did a couple of live demoing of some of those websites. Afterwards, folks came back together and we discussed the next steps, which I'll go over with you here, and then we can see if there are questions as we have time at the end of the presentation. We will be sending a follow-up email summarizing next steps to all participants next week on June the 5th. If any of you would like to receive that email or get a copy of that and you were not registered for the event, I would recommend that you send me an email. I'm Katie Giardello. You'll see my email in just a moment when we get to the end of the slide deck, so that I can make sure you receive a copy of that and you know what your next steps are in terms of moving forward with participating with these Phase 2 agreements. Any transfer liaisons on the call should be aware that we had asked the transfer liaisons to complete a brief survey indicating which courses at your institution fulfill the MiTransfer Pathway courses in each of the 4 programs for Phase 2. The reason that we've asked you to self-report this data is because the new matrix reports we are developing need that data to work properly. And it's a lot easier for you to tell us what your courses are than for me to go into everyone's catalog and try to look it up and perhaps to not have it right for some reason. So this course survey, we had requested this done a little while ago. Not everyone did it, so we reopened it. And those of you who attended the meeting or serve as transfer liaisons will be receiving a reminder next week in your follow-up email that this survey has reopened, and we would like you to complete it before July 1st to make sure that your institution is accurately represented in the course equivalency matrices. We would like to ask for the final uploads of those revised copies of the worksheets to be in Canvas by September 27th. And we will also use this as a deadline for the assessment of course equivalency between and among participating institutions. We will be using the matrices and the worksheets as appendages to the agreement that will go forward at your institution for signature to signal your final participation in this agreement. We expect that that will occur next spring, and we would hope then that institutions could begin implementing in the fall of 2020. You may recall, if you attended the meeting, that you're eligible for a travel stipend. If you did not, unfortunately, you are not eligible for that travel stipend. We will not begin the process of distributing travel stipends until after the second meeting. It is simply far easier with the volume of participants for us to manage the stipends all at one time and only push papers one time instead of twice. So folks who attended will be eligible for $200 in the spring and after they attend in the fall. It is not required that individuals attend both meetings to get the stipends. So if you only went to one, you could still get $200, but if you went to two, then you can get the $400 total stipend. That can be paid directly to the faculty member, or directly to the institution, depending on who paid for the travel upfront. I promised to show you the link. This is the web link for the phase 2 meetings and timeline. So actually clicking on the meeting materials under phase 2 meeting 2 will take you out and actually link you to all of the documents that I have shown today, including this slide deck that was used during the meeting, as well as the revised copies of the worksheet and that course equivalency tracking tool as well. I also promised to let you know who you can contact if you have further questions. These are the folks that are making up the project team. It is usually best to start with your sector representative. So if you're a community college person, you would reach out to Erica. Someone from the public university would reach out to Will, and the private and independent colleges would be talking with Shannon. Some of you already know that I am a technical project consultant, so many times those folks will enlist my support in helping address your questions or comments, but typically it's best to start with them and see if they can work with you, and then come to me when you need the tedious technical support, particularly around Canvas or course equivalency discrepancies. We have breezed through the presentation today. At this time, I'm going to go ahead and pause and see what questions there are from any of you in the audience today, or if there are additional items my colleagues from the associations would like to share before we close for the morning. Well, as they say, silence is golden. I don't see anything in the chat. Is there anything further my association colleagues would like to share before we call it?
This is Erica. Thanks, Katie, and thank you to everyone who joined us today. As we said, in addition to the contact information that's out there, there are two very helpful websites at MiTransfer, mitransfer.net, and very soon to be mitransfer.org will be available. And for those of you who deal directly with some of this transfer work that was on the old Michigan Transfer Network, once our site is live, I would encourage you to go out there and explore some of the resources that are available for faculty and staff, frequently asked questions and technical resources. I will add that the launch of the new MTN on Friday was really deliberately kind of a soft launch. And what you will also find on there are marketing materials, press releases, the logos that we are sharing with institutions, and other training videos and materials as well that may be helpful to orient yourself to the new website and the new information that's out there. So in addition to what you'll see on the website on May 31st, continue to watch for messages from us and from Macro as well, with additional training materials that will be helpful to you as well.
Thanks, Erica. And I forgot to mention that this webinar, as you know, has also been recorded, and the link to the recording will also be placed on that Phase 2 Meeting 2 webpage. So if you wish to share this with any of your colleagues, or you think anyone at your institution might benefit from either taking a look at the slides or listening to the webcast, you are encouraged to link them out. It will probably take me a day or two to convert the recording, but then it'll be posted up there with the rest of the project materials. Any final questions before we say goodbye? Thanks again for your engagement, and I hope everyone has a wonderful day.